afternoon, everybody. It's Kalini Kent here in my In Conversation with series with some wonderful, inspirational people. And today I have an amazing lady in the studio with me who's going to be joining me shortly. Now, we are going through turbulent times, aren't we? And obviously, we've just had another setback. But Michelle has got some amazing tips that she's going to be sharing with us, which will be helping us as we look forward to 2021, and so that we can actually start the new year with a good mindset. And she's also going to be sharing her own personal story as well, which is relating to her situation as a parent of a child with additional needs. So I'd love to welcome into the studio with me, Michelle. Hello, my dear. How are you? And it's lovely to have you here.
Hi. Yeah, good. Thank you. Nice to be with you, Kalini.
Well, we actually have had a conversation before, haven't we, Michelle? And in fact, it was on World Mental Health Day, wasn't it? And that was, in fact, a very, very inspirational one because you were talking all about your situation. But we also felt, though, that today would be really topical because you've got some good nuggets that you're going to be sharing with us to help us with our financial management and looking into 2021 with positivity. So anyway, I'm so pleased to have you here. Have you had a good morning so far? Or has it been quite a stressful time getting ready for Christmas?
It's a little bit different with the children not being at school, and obviously all the plans are sort of a bit up in the air, aren't they, at the moment? But no, it's been okay. We're on the wind down, I think. So yeah, no, we're good.
I was going to share with you, by the way, everybody, that we would love to have your feedback and comments. So if anybody has got any questions, please do put them in the chat and we will be able to show them, in fact, on the screen. The other thing as well is that because we're using StreamYard, if you want your name to show, you do need to actually give StreamYard permission for your name to show. But we do welcome just say hello to us. I can see some eyes on my screen looking already. So it'd be lovely to say hello to us. So Michelle, I thought it'd be great for you to first of all explain, because you're actually one of the directors of Hartford Wealth Management, aren't you? But I just thought it'd be great for us to tell us, first of all, a little bit about your personal background, because you are married to Ryan and you've got children. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So I was born in Northwich, spent most of my childhood in a little village called Lostock Graylem, sort of middle of Cheshire. And yeah, grew up with mum, dad, little brother Josh, who's a couple of years younger than me, and had, a really stable and happy time growing up. I'm very fortunate with that. We had a couple of years that we spent over in California with my dad's job, so that was sort of added a little bit of interest to everything. But Northwich is definitely home for me. So when it came to sort of looking to settle down our family, and Ryan and I started to think about having children, Northwich was definitely where we wanted to come back to. Yeah, career-wise, I chose not to go to university. So I started my career at 18 with a company called PricewaterhouseCoopers. So they're the UK top accounting firm, and globally they're top 4. And they were offering an apprenticeship scheme, which is something that they hadn't been doing previously. So I decided to put my name forward for it. And after several interviews and some crazy testing afterwards, I was offered the role. So that meant that basically I was training to be a chartered accountant with them, with their sort of support, and getting that work experience at the same time as training, which was really important, and has definitely given me a bit of a boost, career-wise.
And in fact, I think it's interesting that you chose to go the route of not going to university, because I think backtracking a little bit, you actually have had quite a strong maths sort of like a talent for maths, haven't you? All the way from schooling, haven't you? Because I think that was probably what was the first triggers, wasn't it?
Maths has definitely been one of those things I've always enjoyed. I think you tend to be good at the things that you enjoy doing, don't you? So I have memories as a child sat down doing homework, but my dad is also very maths minded. So he'd always come and sort of give me those little bits of insight for what was coming next. So yeah, I think maths is just something that naturally has always been a strong point of mine. It's just something that I find relatively straightforward and that I enjoy as well.
Well, can I let you into a secret as well? Actually, maths was my favourite subject at school. And in fact, I think it's probably helped, in fact, when I went into doing my law, because I think with maths it's great because it's like you've got the numeracy, but you've also got the logical thinking, and I think it really just helps you in a lot of different areas, isn't it? That's why I suppose they say it's like the 3 R's: maths, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Maths was like one of the main things, wasn't it? But you also chose not to go to university, and you took the opportunity to join PwC, didn't you?
Yeah, and it was a difficult decision to make. I was at Sir John Dean's College, which is where I did my A levels, and most of the students from there were looking to go on and to do that degree route. But my careers coach there made me aware of an open day that PwC were holding in Manchester. So as a little 18-year-old, it was actually quite a big deal, getting on the train, heading into Manchester. But when they explained to me their program, and that actually at the age of 22 I could be a chartered accountant, and that qualification is the equivalent of a master's degree, it sort of got me thinking, I think this is going to be a good match for me. And so yeah, I went home and I started filling in the application forms straight after that.
Yeah, and I think you also said that looking back, it was quite a hard training, wasn't it? You wonder sometimes how you survived it, because it was obviously took a lot of grit and determination, didn't it? Because you were quite young, really, compared to some of your mates who had gone to university.
Yeah, and I was joining as an 18-year-old with very little life experience, really, and everyone else who was joining had been to university, had a degree. So it was quite sort of going out into the big bad world, long hours, a lot of pressure, and even with the exam pressure. So if you failed an exam by a certain margin, you were fired. If you just failed it, you could resit it once, or then you're fired. So there was a lot of pressure. But with that pressure came a lot of opportunity. I got to see lots of blue chip companies, understand the sort of the backgrounds on how they were working and their business strategies. And I think having that experience at 18 really then gave me a certain work ethic and a way of doing business and running a business. So it definitely gave me some great skills, but it was really hard work at the time.
And I think what's great about it, though, is that it meant, though, that you came out of university. Well, you didn't go to university. You came out at the same time, having been a qualified accountant, at the same time as some of your friends were actually just leaving university. So, in a sense, you've been able to, because we won't talk about your age, but you're actually incredibly talented, and you've achieved a lot in your in your years, because I suppose you've had that early start, haven't you?
I think as well, when I would have been finishing university would have been sort of the end of 2008, when the recession was hitting. A lot of places had stopped taking people on. A lot of the graduate programs were reduced in size. So I think knowing that I wanted a career in finance, had I chosen to do some sort of financial degree and then gone to look for a job at that point, I could have actually found it really difficult. So hindsight's a wonderful thing, but I actually think looking back, it was a really good decision to make at that point.
And then after, and during that period, was that when you met Ryan?
Ryan and I have been friends and known one another since we were about 13, 14. So we have known one another for a long time and been good friends for that period as well. But romantically, yeah, it was when I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers that Ryan himself actually came back from uni, because he was based in Sandbach in Cheshire. So he came back from university, and we just sort of hit it off. It was just one of those things, it's cheesy, but it was just meant to be. And the two of us are completely different in a lot of ways. But yeah, it just works.
So in fact, really, your whole family is Cheshire born and bred and through, really, because both of you.
Absolutely. And in some ways that made it then so easy when it was thinking about starting a family and where to do that. My parents are in Davenham, my nan's in Nantwich, my brother and sister-in-law are in Hartford, the same village that we're in. And, we wanted to have our roots where we knew people around us. And Cheshire's just so family friendly, isn't it? There's so much for families, for children. The schools are phenomenal. So it was naturally the place we knew we wanted to bring our family up.
And we're going to come on, in fact, more to Cheshire, because, of course, when we talk about your challenges with Seb and sort of like the children, basically. But I also think you can tell us a little bit more about how you got headhunted then, didn't you?
Yeah. So I worked at PwC for 5 years, and then I was approached by AXA Nobel. So they're a big, it's not a household name, but they're a big listed Dutch company, and they own in the UK paint brands. So like Dulux and Cuprinol, Weather Shield, those sorts of brands. So yeah, I was approached by them in 2009 to join their business, which I did. So that was initially in Altrincham. That's where the head of their trade business was based. And then I sort of worked my way through the business there. So I eventually ended up working in their head office in London 3 days a week, and was head of their commercial finance retail division. So I looked after a £300 million segment of the business. So it was it was a full on role, but it was lots of fun.
So really, that's quite an incredible achievement, isn't it? Because how old were you by this time for you to taken on all that responsibility and to be headhunted? How old were you at the time then?
I was 28 at the point that I got that final role there. So yeah, it definitely doing that route through PricewaterhouseCoopers, not going to university. Obviously, not for all careers you can't do that. A lot of careers require that you have the degree, but in finance, it's not necessary. They give you the training. So I gave me a 4-year head start, basically. So it was a great thing to do.
Wow. And it was during this time, actually, you had to make a decision about, starting a family, and didn't you? And so is that one of the motivations to get you to move back up to Cheshire?
Yeah, that's it. Well, the maternal clock starts ticking, doesn't it? And we knew we were at that point that we were ready to start a family. But obviously, commuting to London with a baby on the back isn't the most recommended route for motherhood. I'm sure maybe some people could do it. So it was at that point that we sort of started thinking, right, what are we going to do now? And at this point, Ryan's been a financial advisor for, must be 11, 12 years now. And at the point that we were looking to start our family, he already had his own established business. So financially, we were in a position that we could say, right, I'm going to take a career break to have the babies, and Ryan will support us financially through the business. So that's what we did. So we had Seb in May 2015, and then his little sister Harper followed a couple of years later.
Brilliant. Okay, and that's obviously the beginning. We're going to come on to this, aren't we? Please do anybody do actually add any comments. I've got to share this. I wasn't sure whether to or not, but this is a friend, somebody I know, Charlie. He thought it was Michael. I wasn't sure how to take that, but I shared it anyway, Charlie. No, it's Michelle, not Michael.
Surname. Sometimes that doesn't go so well. So,
are you a swimmer, Michelle?
I am actually a swimmer. I was in our local paper at the age of 5 for swimming a whole length. A little picture of me of my swimsuit. So yeah, I love swimming. I used to swim in local clubs and things. So yeah, it's
but I'm really sorry.
I didn't know that I was going to get married to Phelps.
I'm really sorry to disappoint you, Charlie. No, it's not Michael Phelps, it's Michelle. But anyway, we are so lucky to have Michelle here, because she's going to be giving us some amazing nuggets. Got to see a lot of eyes also, other eyes looking. Please do say hello to us, everybody. And if you've got any questions of Michelle, which is going to be coming on to some really good suggestions in a moment about the emotional decisions you make around finances. So going into bring us up to date, you then set up Hartford Wealth Management, didn't you?
Yes. Yeah. So basically, we got to the point where the children were getting a little bit older. Sebastian was about to start school. So we'd always had this vision of setting up our own practice together. Obviously, my background in commercial finance ties in with Ryan's financial advisor experience. So we knew that we had some good skills to put together and launch our own practice. So yeah, in 2019, we launched Hartford Wealth Management, and we did that with the backing of St James Place.
So what's the relationship with St James's Place? What is that? Are they supplying products or?
No, so that we are what's called a partner practice. So they essentially provide the compliance support. So if you think in a financially regulated environment, it's very important to make sure that everything's done correctly. So they provide that back support to ensure that, that they can guarantee the advice that we give. And then they also offered, when we came to join, that financial support to set up the practice and to back us that way. And obviously it helps from a client's perspective. It's not just Ryan and I and our small-ish business. We've got then that backing of a FTSE 100 company. So it does help clients with that confidence of knowing that they can trust us. It gives that extra trustful, I think.
And what I love is when we were talking and preparing for this, is that your vision of of how you wanted Hartford to work. Because I think also what's lovely is that you're very community orientated, aren't you? When you're in the way in which you approach your business, you're very much into the community of Hartford and Cheshire, aren't you? Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your vision? Because I think it's lovely.
Yeah, that meant a lot to us when we were setting up the practice. We had a vision of being a real part of the community, almost like what businesses used to be. So being a hub, being somewhere that's there to get involved in local events and local charities, helping to raise money for local charities. We go into the local schools and offer financial education to some of the children there. So just that general feel of being part of the village. You know, this is the village. We live in Hartford. Our children are growing up here, and we wanted to be that pillar for good in the community. And it's actually something that I've always really enjoyed. In all of my previous roles, I've got involved in that charity side of things. So when we were setting up our own practice, it was really important to me, especially, to make sure that we had that aligned to those values.
And then you've obviously been able to offer other services as well, haven't you? So I think you've set up also something called the Entrepreneur Club. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, of course. So that's something that we currently offer to our existing business owner clients. So this is giving them that business side of support. So whether it's a business that's just set up and it's in its infancy, so maybe they're looking for funding or trying to get certain strategies set up, we can help them with that. But it also goes right through to the other end. So we have clients that might be looking to get exit strategy planning. Maybe they're planning to retire in 10 years' time and they're looking for an external investor. It gives them support from that. So it's that whole journey of a business owner, giving them that support along that journey.
And I think the service that you offer as well at Hartford is quite special. I mean, I've looked. You sometimes sort of like explore different avenues and companies who can actually. In fact, we're not a client of yours, but having said that, I've seen the way in which you go about it. So, what do you think is perhaps one of the reasons for your success? What do you put it down to?
That's a good question. I think we try and take a holistic view with our clients. So it isn't just about what money gets invested where. It's much more about the big picture and what people are really looking to achieve with their money, what their long-term goals are, the lifestyle that they see themselves leading, and really helping them to have that discussion. And often, a husband and wife can have a very different opinion of that. So it's sort of helping them have those conversations. And then when they've got that vision, then using some of the technology and cash flow modeling tools that we've got to then turn that into a financial plan for them. And I think having that overall approach that focuses on the goals, not just on the here and now and what we're doing, really helps people engage with that journey and see what they're saving their money for and what they're working towards. And I think that's also where we really enjoy helping people, because you can help them make decisions that long term can have a big impact on the quality of their life.
And I think getting to know you as well, you're such a personable person as well. And I think between you and Ryan, you can obviously, give a sort of like quite a rounded service, haven't you? And you also offer things like the inheritance tax planning and all that, don't you?
Yeah, all the what I'd call the standard financial advisor side of things. So yeah, your retirement planning, your inheritance tax and estate planning. and those sorts of services. Yeah, absolutely.
So shall we come on to the tips that you're going to give us? Because obviously COVID has impacted so many people in such a drastic way. I think not only from the mental health side of it in terms of like the stresses and the strains and juggling things, lifestyles, but I think certainly obviously a lot of people have lost jobs, or a lot of people are, you know, on furlough, their future, they're on having to live on less income. And I think it's just such a challenging time, isn't it? So what have you found has been, from talking to clients, has been the biggest impact or biggest support that they've needed?
I think the biggest thing that we've ended up talking about is the emotions around investing. I think when we were talking previously, Kalini, we spoke about this emotional journey that people go on. And if you take yourself back to March, when, you know, COVID was just sort of starting to get on our news and on our radar, the markets reacted significantly and they went into free fall. You know, the FTSE all share sort of 30% of its value wiped out. And in the industry, we'd say the markets flashed red. But prior to this, investors had been experiencing steady markets, steady rising markets. So that's perhaps what they were used to. But then as this volatility hit, it shows things change. And when they change, they tend to change quickly. And that's part of the way things are with the stock markets. They always will rise and fall. And sometimes the short-term falls that we see, they can be significant. But history shows that long-term, stock markets tend to rise despite these fluctuations. So it's important to remember that markets are unpredictable. And the only thing that we can really be certain about is that we don't know which way they're going to go. And that's why you'll find a lot of financial advisors will say it's time in the market versus timing the market that is really the key to successful investing.
Do you want to explain what that means? Do you mean like once you invest in the market, you actually keep the money in there rather than trying to choose the right time?
When it comes to markets, our emotions can actually be quite illogical. So to illustrate, I made a note of a couple of numbers actually. So if you were invested in 2003 in the FTSE all share, for instance, then year on year you'd have seen rises of 21%, 13%, 22%. So big rises. If you think about how you'd feel emotionally at that point, excited, perhaps thrilled, euphoric, look at all this money I'm making. And yet it's at this point of the peak positive emotion that actually that's your point of maximum financial risk. Well, then to the other extreme, if you invested in that same product over the 2008-9 recession, then you'd have seen 30% of your value wiped out over the course of a year. If you think about your emotions then and how that might make you feel, I think maybe fear, panic, despondent. And it's at this point that people start to think, maybe the markets aren't for me, you know, maybe this isn't right for me. And yet that signifies the point of maximum financial opportunity. Yeah. So it's converse, but when investors feel the most positive about markets, often that's when they're facing the most financial risk. And when they feel the most negative, then that's often the point of maximum financial opportunity.
Yes, and if you invest at that point, that's when your money is likely to grow most, isn't it? Because it can only go up.
Yeah, but the challenge is that we never quite know where the peak is and where the trough is. So that's where it comes about. Rather than trying to avoid volatility, really the important thing is to manage the risks. And we do that through proper planning and a good investment strategy. And really that is the key, having that strategy in place. And feeling confident in that strategy to not make quick decisions, and to sometimes, you know, we have this conversation with clients of you have to take the emotion out of it because your emotions can lead you to do the wrong thing. There's a finance pioneer called Gilbert de Botton who I've been quoting with clients over this period, and he says it's not uncommon to experience turbulence on a long flight, but that's not a reason to jump out of the aeroplane. And I think you know, yes, it's jovial, but it serves a good point, which is that yes, we will go through bumps, but we mustn't make any rash decisions off the back of that.
So what do you feel about sort of the situation? I mean, in fact, I know that share prices and so on have gone up, in fact, ever since they found that they found the vaccine, didn't they? So literally everything sort of jumped, didn't it? But what is the sort of general trend? Is it sort of to invest or not invest, or?
I think that those conversations are where people often slip up. So the important thing is actually, rather than focusing on the time and whether now is the time, actually focus on your own goals, what it is that you're looking to achieve. And if you are already invested and you're looking at your goals, have your goals changed? Because if they haven't changed, then the investment portfolio that's been designed around those goals should still be appropriate. So, downturns are temporary, and it's important that if you have a plan, that you stick to it, because that then is the way of making sure that you're in that optimum position to maximize your gains when the markets do recover, because history does show us that the markets do recover.
And in fact, really,
it's a hard period for people.
Sorry, I talked over you. Do you want to say that again, Michelle?
No, I was just saying, it's easy for me to sit here and say that theoretically this is what you should do. But obviously, it's a difficult period, isn't it? And so people are feeling those emotions. But that's where we feel that we can really add value as wealth managers, by helping people to just have someone to have that sounding board to express their concerns, and then for us to help just realign them back, remember our goals, remember what we're doing here, and just help to calm that situation.
And in fact, this resonates a lot with me, because let's face it, we're now looking at 2021 and we're going into a new year. We'll hopefully put the back of 2020 behind us, but things are probably going to still be disruptive for a lot of us, not just in the financial world, but just in our lifestyles. And obviously we're in another lockdown now. But so I think it is about, goal. A lot of people are talking about setting goals. And in the same way, financial goal setting is really important, but it's also about setting goals, isn't it, generally in your life? What is it you want, and look at it in the long term. When I work with people on the coaching level, it's like you ask them, what do you want to be, do, and have? But you don't talk just in the next month, you talk in the next year or in the next 5 years. If you were sitting in a rocking chair and looking back, you want to be able to say, well, this is what I will have achieved. But it's not, it's those little baby steps to actually take the big steps, isn't it, and achieve the big things, isn't it? So is it in a sense the same really financially?
It is, yeah, it is. It's all about having a plan, isn't it? And I think, with our clients, we use cash flow modeling to help them structure that plan. But likewise, if someone doesn't have access to that, then, I would say write down, be aware of what comes in and what goes out each month. And doing that really helps you to keep a certain amount of discipline with your money. What is left at the end of the month, or when you sit down, theoretically, what should be left? Because what often happens is, if we don't be aware of surplus or what we're doing with our money, and it just sits in our current account, we're much more likely to spend it. We all have that magpie syndrome, don't we? We all go for the sparkly things. So, it's just having that discipline and that awareness to look at what comes in and goes out.
So in terms of top tips then for now, looking into 2021, and in terms we've talked obviously about the the emotional side of it and the looking long term. So looking in terms of any nuggets of tips for people, because some people will not necessarily have your services to be able to fall back on. So for anybody out there, what the biggest tip? I get the idea that it's obviously about having a plan. What do you think the main tips are then?
I think having a plan has to be the number one thing to do. And it's not just having a plan top level. I would say financially, it's important to sit down and work through it bottom up, to really look at what comes in and what goes out each month, and understand what is left at the end of that. If you're looking to try and set up savings, try and view it like a bill. So have that money going out at the beginning of the month, so that you're not then tempted to spend it. And it just creates much better discipline around your finances. I think something definitely, as we're heading towards the end of March, is to be aware of tax allowances that are available, and make sure that you're using them to the full. Some tax allowances roll forward, but some are use it or lose it. So it's really important that you make sure that you're using those to your advantage. Another thing that I always talk about is compound interest, or that notion of earning interest on interest, and how important it is to use that to your advantage. So the earlier you start saving, the more the power of compound interest can help you with your savings. And Albert Einstein famously called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. You know, it's for a reason. And that's something when I go into the local schools and run finance sessions, it's helping them understand that concept, because it really is a way of helping your money to grow faster.
I love that concept, actually. I think sometimes people don't actually realize it's about, I love the idea of you saying you treat your savings as like a bill. So you actually take that money out at the beginning of the month or whenever you get paid or whatever. So it's like something, it's like it's a non-negotiable, I would call it.
Yeah.
So instead, if you just sort of think, well, if there's some left at the end of the month, I'll save it. It's the other way around. It's a non-negotiable. You therefore put it in. And then, of course, then you've got the other tip, which is that once it's invested or it's saved, you're then having the compound interest, aren't you?
Yeah. And I guess that's where it's having that difference as well. So it's important to have that instant access cash that isn't invested, so that you're putting that money into that savings pot. And it's not there and then off somewhere and you can't access it. If you need it, it's there, but you have to make a conscious decision to access it versus it just being in your current account, which is much, I think we all accept it's much easier to spend our money when it's there.
Now, some people are saying, though, that because the interest rates are so low, is this a time to actually save? Do you know? I don't mean that you don't save, but it's what's the best way of investing, because the interest rates are so low, aren't they?
Interest rates are really low, and it's something that people are really struggling with at the moment. I mean, we use a platform called Flagstones for our clients, which allows them through one account to have access to lots of different bank and building societies rates. So that's, it's important to shop around at the moment. But yeah, interest rates are super low. We're having a lot of conversations with clients about mortgages. I think we have this tendency to want to pay our mortgage off, but the reality is interest rates are so low. Actually, that cash is much better sat in an investment account, earning, hopefully, if it's invested correctly, a lot more than what you're paying interest-wise on your mortgage at the moment.
Right, okay. And then some people, that makes a lot of sense, actually, whereas, as you say, some people think, oh, well, I'll pay the mortgage off. So I think it's that feeling, though, of not being in debt. Once you've got the property.
I understand it. It's an achievement, isn't it? And I think this maybe comes back to, if you look back over the last few decades, interest rates have been so much higher. And so the most sensible thing to do first and foremost is to pay off your mortgage. So I understand the wanting to do that. And then it's like, I own this home. But financially, when you look at the numbers, actually, that isn't necessarily the right thing to do in that order. But this is where it comes into having that conversation about what someone's goals are. So somebody might have the goal to pay their mortgage off, and that's a perfectly valid goal that we can help them support and work towards. But somebody else, that might be different. So it's understanding what's important to you. And that's a big part of what we do, is having those discussions to understand what someone is motivated by and what they're really looking to achieve, because it's different for everybody. We're all unique, aren't we?
Yeah, and I've also been thinking in terms of like something else, which is passive income, because sometimes if you do invest your money wisely, you can actually then have it, generating an income on a monthly basis, or if it's something to keep you as you retire, sort of thing. As if you're in that lucky situation, some people aren't, and I appreciate they aren't, but there are a lot of people who are. But you can actually use it to generate your passive income, can't you?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of coaches around, aren't there, at the moment, that are running schemes specifically or training to help people learn how they can set up their own passive income stream. And yeah, some of them are doing really well from it, but also have some really good success stories of how people have managed to, leave jobs that they're not happy in because of this additional stream, and they've managed to change their financial world around. So yeah, there's definitely lots of opportunities with it at the moment. It's a buzzword, isn't it? Everyone's talking about passive income.
It is, absolutely. But I think obviously we've got to be mindful of the fact that there are some people who haven't actually got the the spare resources to actually save and to be in that position. So if people are in the, you know, the opposite end of the spectrum, who are struggling and who maybe don't have that money, is there any tips? I mean, you've said that obviously one of the things you said to me, it's always, I always believe in, if you need support, ask for it, isn't it? But if somebody needed support on a financial level, where can they go? I mean, you know, can they come and, for example, get sort of like an impartial sort of, you know, non-committed sort of like advice from yourself, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's something that we offered out to the village and to family and friends of clients as COVID hit. So we were saying, you know, people wanted to book in a half-hour appointments, come and it's just having that financial sounding board sometimes, isn't it? Someone to help you work through things. So that's something that we have been and are still offering. If people need, you know, our office, I'll look over here because that's where my office door is, but you know, the door's always open and people are always welcome to come in and ask for help. I think the challenge we have with money, especially in the UK, is that it is that sort of taboo subject. People feel that, you know, whether they have money or don't have money, it's sort of that, oh, I'm not sure if I should talk about it. And so I think that's part of the challenge that is probably happening at the moment when people are struggling. It's having that conversation. So I would really encourage people, you know, do talk to people, because the more people talk, the more we can sort of get rid of that taboo. But also there are people around that can help. And I'm sure there'll be lots of other advice firms like ourselves that would be willing to spare their time just to help you sort of take stock really of where things are at. And that's the thing sometimes, isn't it, taking stock? I think when you get to a position where you are perhaps in debt or accumulating debt, you know, it's not a comfortable situation to be in, and so it's not a comfortable situation to focus on. You know, you see it's the whole shove the invoice in the drawer, shove the paperwork in the drawer because it's too difficult to face it. But really it is sort of facing it head on that then can help you to get control of that. And the government has got quite a few initiatives set up to help people get on top of their debt if they are struggling.
So, in fact, I mean, obviously with COVID, we can't really sort of necessarily come to see you or see another. So the support is available online, isn't it, as well, or face-to-face or via a Zoom call?
Yeah, so at the moment, I mean, it's changing a lot. It's almost changing week on week. But at the moment, we are allowed to see people in our office with masks, obviously, if that is what the client needs. But generally, most of our appointments are being done over Zoom at the moment. And we had a spell in the summer where we were able to do it in clients' gardens or in clients' homes with masks. But yeah, at the moment we are doing most of our business over Zoom, and that is challenging. You know, we all have this Zoom fatigue, don't we? And when it comes to finance, it is personal. So there is that element of, you know, I think one of our clients expressed he likes to look into the whites of your eyes when he's talking to you. But it's that trust, isn't it? It's that trust that we build.
You've got this screen, which is this is my pet thing, which is all about the art of communication. And the thing is, you've got this screen, haven't you? Which is putting this barrier there, which you can't actually read people's body language or read their facial expressions in as easily, or as you say, see into their eyes. I'm trying to look into the camera towards you, my darling. But in fact, we've got lots and lots of eyes watching as well. I can see on my screen. So please, anybody got any questions? Anybody got any challenges or things they want to ask Michelle about, or myself, whilst we're having this conversation, please do. I think the other thing I wanted to just hone in on is this thing about money being a taboo subject. I mean, we're going to, in fact, talk about mental health as well being a, you know, so there's a stigma attached to that. I think people, it's the pride thing sometimes, isn't it? The pride of not wanting to admit you're struggling, or not wanting to admit that you're facing challenges. But I think it's actually important that we do. I think the first step is acknowledging that there's a problem, isn't there? But then also seeking the help. And I'd like to dispel this myth as well, that people only seek financial advice when they've got money. I think you can, and I think this is so I think this is one of the things I really wanted to hone in about today, is that people think that you have to be wealthy, or because of the name of your business, for example, wealth management. It's not about being wealthy, is it? It's about using your money wisely and looking after it, isn't it?
Yeah, and wealth means a different thing to different people. but yeah, we've had people call up with a substantial amount of money and asking whether that was enough. Yeah. But yeah, we help people who have got, who are very asset rich, and we also help people who are just at the very beginning of that journey and are looking to set up a regular saving amount into an investment account, or they're looking at trying to plan out what the next 10, 20 years will look like for them, and we help them from that very base point. So yeah, absolutely. Wealth management isn't about just managing existing wealth. It's about helping you manage your finances to grow your own portfolio and grow your own wealth.
That's brilliant, because that's what I really wanted to get the stress from today. I think I don't want people to think that, you have to be wealthy. Well, because as you say, wealth means different things to different people. It could be £10 in the bank or 20,000 in the bank. It doesn't really matter. It's irrelevant because everybody's personal circumstances are different, aren't they?
Yeah, and we're all going through that same process of setting goals and having a long-term plan and trying to understand what our finances look like with that. And really that's, we use the term holistic financial planning, but it's actually following that journey from start to end. And that is relevant whether you have a lot of money or if you have very little money. It's still that process that people go along.
Yeah. So I would love to get on to the topic also, like you obviously had the children, didn't you, during this process of building up your business. And I think you've now also highlighted, we did this, didn't we? We highlighted this, but I think we could love to just sort of touch on the fact that you faced a lot of challenges, haven't you, with Seb? In fact, when is it you first realised that he had difficulties and challenges?
Yeah, so Seb was about 11 months, and as a mum, I could just see that he was a little bit special. You could just see that there was, he learned to walk forwards and then instantly started walking backwards, or just little quirks of his personality that from very early on, I was aware that he was going to be a little bit of a different little boy. So I think it was when he was just turned 1 that we were, through our health visitor, we got referred to see the paediatrician to get their support with him.
And I think we said that the reason why we wanted to talk about this today is because we want to raise awareness. It's just like we've talked about, money being a taboo subject. We want to raise awareness that sometimes, people can seemingly on the outside be really, really successful and doing very, very well in their lives, but we don't tend to talk about the challenges we face. And it becomes a stigma. And this is where mental health, because you have had challenges, haven't you, as a result of the difficulties you've had. And so it's important to sometimes highlight for people that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to seek help and to acknowledge that you've got challenges. So you've obviously had to battle, haven't you, from day one with Seb and to get him, because I think you said he was obviously his needs were so severe, and yet the school, the council, where they were trying to actually put him into a mainstream school, which was part of the problem, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we've been on a really tricky journey with Seb. So he was diagnosed with autism when he was 2, and he also had severe speech and language delay with that. But one thing I'm really trying to raise awareness of is the challenges that parents of children with additional needs face. And, that from the point that Seb started seeing a paediatrician and we started having to get extra help in place for him, the amount of paperwork and forms and things that need filling in. And, this isn't just paperwork with his name and his date of birth. This is paperwork in chapter and verse on everything he can't do, on every challenge he faces. And as a parent, that's really hard to write about your child like that. You almost feel that you're being disloyal. And yet, write it you do because that's what you have to do. You send it off, and 9 times out of 10, it comes back and they will reject you, for you to then have to appeal and then go to tribunal. And, when I first went through this, I thought this was my experience. But actually, now that I am have a contact and have friends who are also in this special needs world with me, this is everyone's experience. And it's just so much pressure. Being a mum is really hard work as it is, It requires a lot from you, but then to have these additional pressures on top is really difficult, and it does definitely take its toll on your mental health. We had to get Sebastian into a special needs school, Bearing in mind this is a child that couldn't talk, couldn't regulate himself. He wasn't able to tell you if he was hungry, if he needed a drink. And yet we were told, despite doing all the paperwork and explaining all of his needs, despite having an educational psychologist say that he needed specialised support, we were told he can go to a normal school, and not even with full-time support at a normal school. So yeah, you know, I'm happy to sort of put my hands up and say it took its toll on me. It really affected my mental health, and at one point when we finally got it, you know, we had to take it to tribunal. But when Seb did eventually get his spot at the right school, my body was just, you know, it had enough, and I had a few weeks of being in a really bad place.
You sometimes keep yourself really strong because you need to, don't you? And that's so important, because you do, and you needed to maybe carry on fighting this battle. I think the other thing I thought was very, very sad is the fact that you said almost like it's almost like being tested. You know, to show how determined you are, you have to keep going through. It's almost like you're rejected to start with, and you have to keep fighting. Whereas almost it should be the other way around. It's almost you've got this right, but then they maybe will question. You know, they check whether, you know, who's most. I think basically it's difficult to be saying that, you know, this person's more worthy of support than another. That's wrong, isn't it?
Well, it shows that it's all sort of based on the financial side of things, isn't it? And that financial support. And what I always found quite upsetting is, you know, I think of myself as a professional person and quite a capable person, and I found this battle and all this paperwork very, very challenging. And I would cry and saying it's not fair that I feel I'm at least able to do this and to fight this battle to get Sebastian what he needs. But what if there's another child whose needs are just like Sebastian, and actually their mum isn't very confident filling in forms, isn't very confident to fight these battles? You know, that child deserves exactly the same as what Sebastian deserves. And yet the way that the system is set up is to disadvantage that family over perhaps ours, where I felt able to fight that battle. And that's just not right, is it? It's just not fair.
No. And so during this period, you obviously sought support elsewhere, didn't you? And I think you've said, which is wonderful, that there were some amazing organisations in Cheshire which supported you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So when Seb was first diagnosed with autism, we knew that we needed to learn more about what that meant. So at that point, we reached out to a charity called Cheshire Autism Practical Support, or CHAPS as they go by. So they look after families in Cheshire West and Cheshire East. They have a hub in Norwich and in Runcorn. But they really helped me and signposted me to some of the courses that were available that the National Autistic Society were running. And that really just helped me have a bit more of an understanding as to how Seb's brain works, because their brains do tick differently. Yeah. They really helped me with that. And they also run small groups for children. So they'll hire out certain areas so the kids can go and play without there being any judgment. And they also run some great support meetings for parents. So that was one of the charities that I initially accessed. And then another charity that I became aware of a couple of years after that is a charity called Tiny Steps. Yeah. Now, Tiny Steps was set up, again, it's based in Cheshire in centres in Davenham. And they are all about helping children with additional needs, so regardless of what that need is, but also the family as well and the siblings. So they run fortnightly stay-and-play sessions where you can go as a family and the children can play and you just can feel safe. You're with other families who have got other challenges. And if Sebastian is, you know, having a meltdown and he's screaming or he's upset or something's gone wrong, they're there to just say, "Are you all right? Do you need a hand?" versus staring and, you know, from an anxiety perspective, it just creates this safe place. And yeah, we've really Tiny Steps have been a fantastic help for our family, and I know that there's other families in the area who will say the same, that it's a lifeline.
If I mean, for people who haven't got a child with additional needs, I mean, what are the most what are the biggest challenges that you face on a, say, on a day-to-day basis?
I think, gosh, it's a hard question to answer. I think there's always, your brain is always on the go thinking about what they might need from you next. And it is non-stop. So you don't really get those moments to just stop and wind down. So there's this beautiful ideal that, you know, the child goes to sleep and the parents then get to sit down and have a bit of a breather, preferably with a glass of wine in my instance. But that isn't really the truth of it. You know, needs, they often don't sleep. They often don't go to, if they do sleep, they don't go to bed until very, very late. And it isn't just a case of being able to sit there and read them a bedtime story or use these sleep training techniques. It doesn't work on our children. And that is exhausting. It's also then all the extra things that they need. So Sebastian doesn't eat very well. He is very sensory with his mouth, so he struggles with his food. So it's trying to think about the techniques and things that you know you need to get in place to help them. There's always something that needs to be done.
And so I would think that the biggest challenge as well, because you have said to me that he's fairly behind with his speech and his learning. So at one point you said he didn't speak at all.
No.
And so that must be really difficult for him to be able to communicate his needs to you. And you know, that must be really, really hard.
Yeah, and that's something that takes a lot of time as well. So it can be a smaller thing as he has an iPad, you know, and he wants to watch something on his iPad. Now he knows in his head what he wants to watch, but he can't do it himself. He needs mummy to do that, but he can't communicate what it is. So you are going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and he's getting more and more frustrated each time you're trying to guess what it is and get it wrong. And those sorts of things are, you know, it's heartbreaking because sometimes the frustration, he can sob. And, you know, as a mum, for your child to be crying and it's just because they just can't tell you what they need, you know. I've been sat there with him crying too sometimes, going, Zeb, if you could just tell me what it is, I will do whatever it is for you. And it's that emotional energy that's required to give that support full time, because it's.
And I think it must be really hard for you as a parent as well. I thought it was really good to just thank you so much for sharing this, because I know it's hard, but I think it's also good for people to understand the challenges people face and why it's so important to fight for these things, because you know, it really you know, it's really making me feel quite emotionally upset about thinking that, because on a daily basis you're doing this every single day. Now people get respite, don't they? It's not even as if I've recognized and I've learned from you that it's not even as if you can sort of say, okay, call a childminder around and let's go out for the evening. You and Ryan don't get that luxury. And no. I know you've recently gone down to Devon to have a bit of respite, but I think it's like, you know, most people get that chance to go out and have a break from the monotony or the difficulties they have, but you don't get a lot of that, do you?
No, and you know, I'm very fortunate to have my parents just down the road in Davenham, and you know, they are brilliant and they do everything that they can to help, but they can't do it all. And yeah, it is, you know, Ryan and I have actually laughed that during lockdown, a lot of families have probably experienced what our normal life might be like. We can't go out and do normal things with Sebastian. You know, we can't just go to a restaurant for tea, because he's going to choose to go and hide under someone else's table. He's going to want to stroke someone's hair. You know, it's very, very challenging to do things that people might think are normal. A lot of people looking in wouldn't understand that. And it's not just the fact that you can't do it. It's then, you know, what about, so Harper, our younger daughter, she loves doing those sorts of things. So it's then that parental struggle to balance it out, you know, to try and give both children that rounded upbringing and the best experience that you can. But it is really draining, and having gone through it and known how hard it can be, it's really important to me to share that and to talk about it now that I'm able to, because it's not just me. There's loads of parents going through this, and it's really hard. And if me talking about it can help someone else to talk about it, or can help someone to maybe see a child have a meltdown and not look or not stare, or say, can I help? You know, we need to be more inclusive of these children, because not just of the impact on the child, but also on the whole families. People really can make a difference.
And I think you're lucky because you have got such an amazing support structure, haven't you? Because you've got your parents and you've got, I mean, Ryan's been a pillar, isn't he? And the two of you together are an amazing team, aren't you, in terms of the children? But there must be people who, you know, situations like this do actually cause the breakdowns of marriages, don't they? And it must be really, really tough. So I suppose I just wanted to use this opportunity for us both to highlight the needs and the support that's required. And I think it's about people being more compassionate about your situation, because as you say, you know, when you're a parent and out and the child sort of having a meltdown, you're absolutely feeling mortified, aren't you, as a parent, and people feeling you're feeling judged. But
that's that mum, you know, almost like, oh gosh, what's that mum done, or why can't that mum control that child? You know, that's, you can see it, and you sometimes, you know, the older generation can be quite bad at, you know, they'll tut as they walk past. So yeah, absolutely, it's not helpful. But what I would say is, if there are parents that are watching this who are struggling, then there are organisations out there that can help and that are helping. And the best thing I've done is surround myself with other families and other parents who face similar challenges to me, because they just get it, and you don't need to explain it because they've been there. So if anyone is watching this and is struggling, please reach out to some of these charities. It really does make a big difference.
So I think we're going to be leaving a list of the charities in afterwards in our conversation, so that people can actually find those links, can't they, Michelle? And I think it'd be useful also if people wanted to reach out and sort of to you about, you know, not only the financial support advice and strategies and tips about sort of helping them with maybe savings, but I think also on this particular topic as well, I think it would be really good, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
I mean, in terms of one of the, you know, main tips, I think you've said, so in this situation, is it about surrounding yourself with people who can support you?
Yeah, and in some ways, I think that's why it's so sad how COVID is at the moment, because parents who are starting this journey, whose children aren't school age, perhaps they're struggling to access that support because we aren't allowed to meet in groups. But yeah, just surrounding yourself with people that face similar challenges to you. And I suppose that applies to being a parent of a child with additional needs. It applies to lots of other parts of life, doesn't it? That when you struggle, it's helpful to have people around you who can understand what it is that your challenges are and what it is that you're facing. But definitely.
And I think what you said just now is quite poignant, actually, is the fact that, let's face it, the parents who've had their children at home from school because of lockdown, and, you know, just think about the challenges that they all faced and how hard they found that, trying to juggle, trying to, you know, keep a job down, and then all of a sudden having to, you know, the child all of a sudden being at home because they're not well, etc. Because what we haven't talked about is actually, because of Seb's condition and you know, and Harper a little bit to some extent, sometimes you have to drop everything, don't you?
Yeah, you do. Sometimes that's just what's necessary. You know, it isn't just a case of being able to send them to an after-school club or call in a babysitter. He needs somebody who really understands his needs and can understand the non-communication communication, which you'll know all about. Those subtle communications that he gives that helps you work out what it is that he needs. Yeah, it's not. And you know, that's why it's wonderful having a family business, because Ryan and I can support one another with that. So, you know, if something is needed instantly, it doesn't have to be me. Ryan is great at saying, well, you know, you do that, I'll go and get Seb or help with the children. But yeah, it is sometimes a case of everything has to get dropped.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been absolutely wonderful you sharing what you've done with us today, Michelle. I really do appreciate it. So is there anything else you want to share before we go?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you so much for having me on today, and thank you for letting me raise awareness and helping me raise awareness of the challenges that some parents really do face. All parents face challenges, but with the child with additional needs, it is so much harder. So it's important to share that. And also, just I guess from a money perspective, let's talk about it. Let's break this taboo. It doesn't need to be a taboo subject. And the more people talk, the more that will spread.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And I just want to highlight once again, if anybody's got any questions after this conversation, I do then actually do sort of like some technical work on the recording, and it actually goes onto my YouTube channel so anybody can see it. So I will actually be sharing that afterwards. But it's been absolutely wonderful having you, Michelle. And anybody who wants to be in conversation with me in the new year, please do get in touch with me, because I love doing these conversations to raise awareness of important issues that are important to us, and also to just find out about people in a deeper level, because it's not like you're going to go on and do a live and tell everybody all about this. It's just really a good opportunity to give you an opportunity to share your story, isn't it?
Yeah, thank you.
It's a pleasure, and thank you so much, everybody, and thank you for those people who've been listening. I've been seeing lots of eyes watching, and feel free to add comments in the chat afterwards, and also let us know, if you're watching on replay. Take care, everybody, and I hope you have, in case I don't speak to some of you, do have a wonderful, safe, and as enjoyable as possible Christmas. Even if it has been shortened a bit, let's look at it positively and take every opportunity to love each other and care for each other, and stay safe and have a good time. Take care, all my love. Bye-bye.